So, an interesting conversation started up about a week ago, and this really came in the wake of all of the rumors and hype about a possible Skyward Sword HD port coming to the Nintendo Switch, thanks to Eiji Aonuma and his comments at the Zelda Orchestra show in Japan. And the idea of this conversation centers around whether or not we might see Zelda kind of become something of an annual series. A little bit of rumors and talk on the internet about a possible Zelda release in 2019, which people have discussed a variety of possible ways that could happen. It could be the Skyward Sword HD remaster. It could be a different game getting an HD remaster or a re-release. It could be a brand new game. It could be a sequel to Breath of the Wild. It could be a top-down Zelda, a remaster, or a new game, something akin to A Link Between Worlds. I mean, all of the above. Maybe even another kind of Four Swords adventure or Triforce Heroes kind of experience. All of these different options were discussed. People saying, hey, 2019 really seems like it's going to have another Zelda game, Skyward Sword or something else, and so what could this mean? And so, like I said, that's really where this concept of Zelda becoming an annual kind of experience came from. And I thought that it was an interesting idea, because when you look at today's game market, that is something that we see happening more and more. There is something to the idea of having a franchise that releases annually, which of course the first ones that come to our mind are series like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed, or you get the kind of persistent online universe games, the free-to-play games, the games as a service games, where there's constantly updates and new content and things coming to a game, whether it's in the form of seasons like something like a Diablo or a Fortnite, or big expansions the way games like also Call of Duty or even Destiny and things like that do it, where annually, every so months or at least once a year, you're getting new content for that game. And so while that doesn't necessarily make it like an annual release kind of experience, it does mean that they're always giving us, every year, new stuff to play for a game. Now, when I think about this being applied to Zelda, it's interesting. And it's kind of tough, because I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it. I think the first thing that I want to state is just my opinion or guess on just the very idea of Zelda being an annual series. And one thing I will say is I don't think that it's going to happen. I know some people want to believe that this is part of Nintendo's plan behind the scenes. And, you know, I usually say this when talking about Nintendo. Anything is possible, and there is no certainty, so just because I feel like it's not likely to happen doesn't mean that Nintendo won't surprise us and make it happen. I mean, I could easily see them shocking us and saying, hey, Zelda's going to have a release of some kind every year for the next 5 years, and I'd be like, wow, okay, I guess that's a thing that's happening. But right now, just the way I see things and the way I would kind of guess Nintendo would take Zelda going forward, I don't really see that being a possibility right now. You know, mostly because I think a Zelda game takes so long to complete and to develop. And even if you're looking at the smaller experiences and they wanted to do things more commonly like a Four Swords, something that could be easier and quicker to develop, I still feel like Nintendo has a certain level of integrity, I think, that they want to keep present in Zelda as a franchise and as a release, and so they probably want to keep a lot of that intact. And they like the idea of Zelda being a special release. Anytime any new game comes out that has Zelda in the title, they probably want it to feel special, and so I think they would want to prevent it from being diluted or watered down with so many releases, and you get so many spin-off, another Hyrule Warriors, another Triforce Heroes, another Four Swords, another Link Between Worlds, and then the main game. They probably would want to avoid that. And I can tell you that for myself, I think I would prefer them to avoid that as well. But of course, that doesn't mean that it's impossible that something like this happens, like I said. And so, is there a world where it could make sense for Zelda to become annualized? And I mean, honestly, yeah, I could see how it could work, even though I said I wouldn't prefer it and I don't expect it to happen. I still think that there could be a way that Nintendo could make it work. And the way to do it is kind of really what I already said. I mean, they basically would fill the gaps, fill the years between main console next experiences, like between Breath of the Wild and its sequel or successor. They could just fill those years with little spin-off games. And there has been a lot of conversation and rumor. I guess I could say rumors. It's more speculation, and it's more people, I think, having this on their wish list than it is any sort of rumor. The idea of Nintendo making some kind of new top-down Zelda experience, which again could be anything from remasters of like Zelda or Link to the Past to a brand new game, the way they made A Link Between Worlds as its own brand new game and sequel. There's been a lot of people talking about that. I truly think it's wishful thinking. Some people might want to tell you it's some kind of rumor or Nintendo's actually planning it behind the scenes. I just don't believe that's true. I haven't heard anything like that myself behind the scenes, but of course I'm not privy to everything behind the scenes, so it's not like it's impossible. Nothing really tells me that Nintendo's actually planning on doing a new top-down Zelda of some kind in 2019 at all, other than just the simple fact that people want it. And hey, I'll be real with you guys, I wouldn't mind it. In fact, I would probably love it. I am an old man, you guys know that. I grew up on the original Zelda when it was brand new and it blew my mind. I was like 5 years old or whatever when my older brother brought home, you know, his NES and put in Zelda for the first time, and I just was like awestruck at what I was seeing. So the idea of a new top-down Zelda, remaster or sequel or otherwise, does make me excited. I would like to see that. I would like to see what Nintendo could do with that, and I would love to see a game like that on the Switch for sure. But I don't know, nothing tells me that they're doing that right now. One thing I will say though is that when you consider the fact that, like I said, more and more series nowadays are becoming annualized series, whether it's new releases or new content that comes every year, new seasons, stuff like that. And so, in a world where that's becoming more common, if you then look at Nintendo's library and try to think of games and franchises that make sense to have annual releases, weirdly, I actually still think Zelda kind of does make sense and is probably one of the best options Nintendo could choose to do that with. I mean, Mario probably jumps to mind, and I could see a situation where they make a new Super Mario Brothers game, and then every year another new Super Mario Brothers game would come out, or like a new content every year for a new Super Mario Brothers game would come out, or a Mario Maker or a Zelda Maker, stuff like that. You could see those franchises maybe also working. Obviously, Pokemon in many ways has been kind of annualized, where it gets like, you know, one release of 2 games, and then I think the following year they've been doing like remasters or like, you know, stuff like that. You guys know I'm not a Pokemon fan, so I don't know all the details, but I think for the most part, Pokemon games have had very regular releases over the past, I don't know, 6, 7, 10 years or whatever. But I still feel like when you look at everything on top of those games, I think Zelda weirdly makes sense, and I think it's because we've seen so many spin-offs in the Zelda name before that it's maybe easy for me to picture a weird Hyrule Warriors sequel, and then a weird Triforce Heroes, and then a weird Four Swords, and then a weird top-down remaster, and then the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Like, I could almost see them doing something weird like that because they've made so many other weird games. Not to mention, let me throw this option in as well, a mobile game. We know that they're making some kind of Zelda mobile game, and maybe that's how they could kind of squeeze that in as well. So you get like the Hyrule Warriors kind of experience, you get the multiplayer co-op Four Swords kind of experience, you get the top-down experience, you get the mobile experience, and you could fill 4 or 5 years between Breath of the Wild and the next game right there if Nintendo wanted to make games in all of those different sort of genres that are also Zelda games. It's just, I don't know, man. Even though I'm somebody not really asking for this or even believing it's likely happening, I just could also see that. I mean, that structure, that business model for Zelda just makes sense. And even though they might not want to dilute the Zelda name like I talked about, at the end of the day, if they did decide to do something like this, let's be honest with ourselves, it would be successful, okay? They would sell a lot of copies of all these games, they would get a lot of people excited, it would keep Zelda ever present in people's minds, and they would surely make a lot of money. And I think that if Nintendo were to lay this game plan out, it would almost work more in their favor. And I think that, you know, if you were to just release a random Triforce Heroes sequel out of nowhere, a lot of people might be kind of disappointed and say, oh god, Nintendo, another dumb co-op thing. We don't want that. We want the sequel to Breath of the Wild. But if Nintendo came out and said, hey, we have this cool new plan for Zelda as a franchise, and here's what it is. The next 3 or 4 years, we're going to give you one spin-off, side story, kind of fun little distraction entry in the Zelda franchise. And then, you know, after 3 or 4 years, we're going to be revealing to you the brand new game that is the successor to Breath of the Wild. And if they just told people that, I think that then the announcement of that new Triforce Heroes sequel that otherwise people would be down on, people would probably then be excited because they understand where it's coming from, why it exists. It's just a fun little Zelda distraction to keep us busy with Zelda until that new game that we want comes. And in doing that, they tell us that they're making that new game, they confirm it's something that they're working on, even though we all pretty much know it anyway, but it softens the blow, man. It's the kind of, we've seen so much blowback in the industry the last couple of years when game companies announce weird projects that they should have known people don't want, and then they get a lot of blowback for it. Obviously, Federation Force, the recent Diablo Immortal, those are examples. The Command and Conquer thing, you can't do it that way. You gotta reveal Diablo Immortal, but also tell people Diablo 4 is coming. You gotta reveal Federation Force, but also tell people that Metroid Prime 4 is coming. You got to do those things nowadays with certain franchises, and I feel like you could get away with spin-off Zelda games, you know, for 3 years in a row if we all hear out loud from someone at Nintendo that, yes, we are also working on the successor to Breath of the Wild. Again, we obviously are all not stupid, and we know that that's true, but we haven't heard them say it, and just hearing them say it, tell me I'm wrong, guys. That goes a long way, and that softens the blow, and it kind of greases the wheels, so to speak, for everyone else to just kind of be cool, be chill and laid back. We don't have to go downvoting trailers on YouTube, and we can just be like, cool, Triforce Heroes 2 this year, Breath of the Wild 2 next year, and everyone's happy. So yeah, I just think it's an interesting idea. Zelda being an annual franchise, or Nintendo, just as a company, releasing an annual franchise of some kind, and it would be interesting if it's Zelda. Again, in summary, I don't believe they're doing this. I don't think that this is a behind-the-scenes rumor. I haven't heard anything about this, and I don't necessarily even desire it myself, but I would be very curious to see what would happen in a world where Nintendo did try to do this, and we might still get a lot of great Zelda games out of it, and that's never a bad thing. So those are my feelings on this idea and this conversation that's been going around on the internet the last 2 weeks or so. What do you guys think about this, you know? Like I said, this came in the wake of the Skyward Sword rumor that Nintendo shut down only a few days later, although I still think that game may happen at some point. It's probably bound to, but do you guys think that Zelda being annual makes sense? Do you like the idea? Do you hate the idea? What kind of games do you think Nintendo could use to fill the gaps between the successor to Breath of the Wild and future games down the road? How do you think that they could make it work? Talk about it below. I want to hear what you guys think, and that is going to be it for me. So thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R, and I'll catch you next time on another video.